Hello students, Mr. Young here. Today we're in Chapter 13, Lesson 4. We're talking about California and Utah. So we got a whole lot of war and battle and excitement, and then boom! Let's hop right into some big history with California and Utah. Not as violent anymore, not as many battles, but different reasons for how California and Utah became populated. So let's take a look, shall we? So if I told you that there was gold discovered all the way on the other side of the country, would you move there, assuming you could? You might, especially if I told you that there was a good chance that you'd become rich. Like a get-rich scheme almost. And that was really the case of the 49ers. Unfortunately, most 49ers didn't get rich, but the thought of striking it big had many Americans moving to California in 1849. Today, we talk about the folks that moved to sunny California, and we'll also discuss the Mormons and their movement to Utah. So, let's start with the gold rush. Gold was discovered in California at a sawmill belonging to a guy by the name of John Sutter in 1848. This mill is historically known as Sutter's Mill. Initially, he tried to keep it quiet. And it makes sense, right? Sutter's Mill belongs to Sutter. So he tried to keep this news quiet, but news of gold spread like wildfire. And all of a sudden, papers are writing about it. And then all of a sudden, people are like, oh my God, there's gold in California. And all kinds of people start moving to California because they think they can move there, find some gold in the hill, and get rich. Most of the folk came in 1849. Hence the name 49ers. So 49ers moved to California in 1849. Most of the 49ers were Americans, and that was about 80%, but the other 20% was a rather diverse group of Mexicans, Europeans, South Americans, and even the Chinese, making the trip across the Pacific. On the topic of Mexicans, we learned that the USA grabbed up California basically when the U.S. defeated Mexico in the Mexican-American War that we just learned about. That was part of the Mexican Cession, remember? What we did not mention was that all the Mexicans living in California automatically became U.S. citizens. They were called the Californios, and these Californios were supposed to be guaranteed their land as part of the Mexican Cession, part of that treaty that ended it. So all the Mexican people living in California get to keep their land. Okay, roger that. But if a dispute did arise where, say, a new American moving in, claimed that the land was theirs and the Mexican had said that it was theirs, if they didn't have documentation provided, they couldn't provide documentation saying that the land was there, like a legal document, then their land was often taken. Some was able to provide this proof, but others weren't, and they lost their land as a result. Let's bump on to the life of a 49er. So, most of the 49ers were not experienced miners. They were regular Joe Schmoes just trying to strike it big. If gold was found in an area, they would just try to dig it up with their shovels and picks or pan for it in the streams. With such a massive influx of people in the small towns, these small town populations exploded. Towns went from literally 2 houses to 1,000 people in a year. These were called boom towns. They were booming. They popped up rapidly. It is said that the gold rush doubled the world's supply of gold. But for all that gold, few people actually made it big. Many folks found small amounts of gold, but then they would spend it on cards and women and otherwise unproductive means. They basically burned it all away. I tell you who will make... let me try again. I will tell you who made a killing, though. The merchants. Basically, they overcharged for their goods and services. They gouged prices, which is a word for massively overpricing it, because they knew that they were the only person around that could sell that shovel or that breakfast or that pair of pants. So you had all these people moving in, not a lot of people to supply goods. People that did supply the goods would gouge their prices and make a ton of money off all these people that needed that stuff. Yeah, it's a dirty practice. These mining towns that popped up were rowdy places. There were not a lot of families and not a lot of women, just towns of men looking to get rich and, well, get in trouble. There's no lawman in a lot of these towns, and you ended up with what's called vigilante justice. A vigilante is a person that takes the law into their own hands serving as police, judge, jury, and executioner. A more modern example of a vigilante justice would be like Batman or the Punisher. They're not police officers. They just dole out justice as they see fit. Another popular one on Netflix, there's that Daredevil series. Daredevil is another example of a vigilante. Now, let's talk about economic and political progress. All that population heading into California had a lasting effect. Many people did not make it rich, but after they did not make it rich, a lot of them stayed and did other work such as farming. They settled down, basically. California applied for statehood in 1849 as a free state. This, of course, caused balance problems between slave states and free states, but it would become a state in 1850. All right, Utah. No gold in Utah. Actually, maybe there was. So at the same time this whole gold rush going on, Utah was being populated by Mormons, otherwise known as followers of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Mormon religion was founded in the 1830s by Joseph Smith. He had a plan of building his ideal society. It's kind of a common thing. And this included common ownership of property. Smith initially set up a following in New York, but they were forced to move. One practice of Mormons was polygamy, which means having multiple wives. That's polygamy. Poly meaning many. This practice made Mormons, in a generally sort of Christian-dominated society, very unpopular. In 1839, the Mormons bought a town in Illinois and renamed it Nauvoo. It was a prosperous town, but Joseph Smith was killed by an angry mob of non-Mormon locals. They weren't welcome wherever they went for the most part. After this, a guy by the name of Brigham Young became the leader of the Mormons, and he knew they had to pack it up and move far away, far away to build their ideal society. Okay. The Mormons moved into Mexican territory and set up shop at the Great Salt Lake in 1847. Through hard work and determination, they turned the land into a prosperous place. Good for them. They made their own industry to maintain self-dependence. They even sold goods to 49ers traveling through. In 1848, the USA acquired the Salt Lake region from Mexico, and Utah became a territory. This was 1850 with Brigham Young as the governor. The Mormons did not assimilate well, however, into the United States, so did not fall into the fold. There were conflicts with federal authorities, and the Army actually almost went to the war with the Mormons in the late 1850s. A main holdup to statehood for Utah was polygamy. Not until 1896, when polygamy was officially given up by the Mormons, did Utah finally become a state. That was the holdup. All right, very next page. Have our little quiz. You'll have multiple attempts. Nothing crazy. 10-point quiz. That's it for today. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you at our very next lesson. Have a great day.